For decades, Hollywood has given us unforgettable duos, but none as magnetic, timeless, and soul-stirring as Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Two men whose names became synonymous with charisma, craft, and camaraderie. And while the world knew them as legends on screen, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, and countless other classics. The truth of their bond went much deeper than lines delivered under the bright lights of a camera. For theirs was not merely a professional collaboration but a friendship woven from respect, laughter, rivalry, and shared humanity. A brotherhood that endured the highs and lows of fame, the turbulence of personal struggles, and the passing storms of time itself. And though Paul Newman left this world in 2008, his presence remained carved into the heart of Robert Redford, who for years remained reticent, almost guarded, about how deeply Paul had shaped his life, until, as age caught up with him and the shadows of mortality grew longer, Redford finally opened up, his voice tinged with both sorrow and gratitude, offering the world one last glimpse into the truth of a bond that defined not just their careers but their very identities. And to understand the weight of his confession, we must journey back to the beginning, to the late 1960s, when Hollywood was at a crossroads. A new wave of cinema was crashing against the old guard, and two men from different backgrounds found themselves thrown together on a project that neither could have predicted would alter the course of their lives. For when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was announced, Newman was already an icon, a blue-eyed heartthrob who had proven himself not just as a matinee idol but as a serious actor with substance. While Redford was still clawing his way up, talented but relatively unknown, desperate to prove he belonged in the same arena as giants like Newman. And yet when the cameras rolled, magic happened. Not the kind that can be manufactured or scripted, but the raw, electric spark of two souls meeting in the perfect moment, blending wit, charm, and authenticity in a way that audiences couldn't get enough of. And suddenly, they weren't just Paul Newman and Robert Redford. They were Butch and Sundance, partners in crime, brothers in arms. A pairing so natural that the world demanded to see them together again, which they did in The Sting, a film that not only cemented their on-screen chemistry but won the Academy Award for Best Picture, solidifying their status as Hollywood's golden duo. But behind the smiles and the easy banter was something deeper. For Newman, older and more seasoned, became a mentor of sorts to Redford, teaching him the ropes, showing him how to navigate the treacherous waters of fame, yet never lording his success over him. And Redford, in turn, gave Newman a youthful spark, a reminder of what it felt like to hunger, to chase, to fight for every role. And as the years unfolded, their friendship became a sanctuary in an industry often defined by ego and betrayal. Yet it was not without its complications, for Redford later admitted that part of him always felt overshadowed by Newman's immense fame, that being cast alongside Paul meant forever being labeled the junior partner, the handsome sidekick, and while it frustrated him at times, it also pushed him, drove him to carve out his own identity, to become not just an actor but a director, a producer, and a visionary in his own right. And still, through all of it, he never stopped loving Newman like a brother, for their bond was built not on competition but on an unspoken recognition of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. And when Newman began his philanthropic work, founding Newman's Own, raising hundreds of millions of dollars for charity. Redford stood in awe, recognizing that Paul's legacy was not just on screen but in the lives he touched. And when cancer came for Newman, Redford was gutted, unable to imagine a world without his partner. And though he struggled to articulate his grief at the time, years later, as he himself neared the twilight of his life, he finally allowed the words to come, admitting that Paul Newman was more than a co-star, more than a friend. He was family, the brother he never had, the anchor in an industry that so often left him adrift. And Redford confessed that one of his deepest regrets was that they never made a third film together. That time and circumstance robbed the world of another chance to see their magic unfold. But even so, what they created together will outlive them both, etched forever in the history of cinema. And as Robert Redford, now in his 90s, reflects on a life of triumphs and regrets, he admits that his story is incomplete without Newman's, that no matter how many awards he won, how many films he directed, or how many accolades came his way, the measure of his life will always be tied to the man who walked beside him during the most transformative years of his career. And in those quiet, reflective moments, when the lights are dim and the cameras no longer roll, Redford whispers the truth that fans have long suspected. He loved Paul Newman, not in the fleeting, shallow way Hollywood often defines love, but in the enduring, soul-deep way that only true friendship can create. And it is that love, that loyalty, that laughter, and that loss which defines not just why the world adored them, but why, even now, as Robert Redford prepares to say his final goodbyes, the legacy of Butch and Sundance still lives on, not just in film reels and photographs, but in the beating hearts of all who believe that some partnerships are too profound to ever fade. And as we honor his words and remember their bond, let us also remember that behind every legend is a human being, vulnerable and yearning. And behind every great story is a truth too powerful to remain unspoken. And if this story touched you as deeply as it touched us, don't forget to subscribe to Hollywood Vault 8 AM, where we uncover the untold stories, the hidden confessions, and the emotional legacies of Hollywood's brightest stars, because the curtain may fall, but the truth always remains.